This is the Veteran Woman Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to empowering, inspiring, and encouraging veteran women to overcome their struggles and celebrate their successes. Now, here's your host, the one and only Airial.
Hello, everyone. Man, I tell you, I'm so excited for this episode of the Veteran Woman Podcast. I have a dear friend, business partner, support system here on the line with me today. His name is Kwame Corbett. Of course, I call him Kwame because apparently I like to be all fancy and stuff with people's names and other names and stuff. But anyways, welcome, Kwame. I'm so excited to have you and finally talk to you.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I mean, you stay busy. And on this, I only have 30 minutes to talk to you, so I feel like I'm rushing.
No, take your time. We're all good. And yes, I try to.
I am not going to let Marisol get on me. Oh, no.
She has been on me with my schedule, so yes.
Oh, wow. She's amazing. So, I mean, definitely keep her because she is on her P's and Q's and yours as well.
Thanks.
So tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I am one half of Blaze Entertainment podcast. I am also one half of I'd Rather Not podcast, and I am the managing producer of Pyro Media Network. So, yeah, pretty busy guy, and that's just in the podcasting world. So I also do a lot of activism and advocacy in the LGBTQ community, specifically in the LGBTQ community of color. So, yeah, I try to keep my schedule busy, but, you know.
Did you really only give like a 10-second introduction?
I'm a little humble.
Okay, so let me see how much I can pull out of you because I know I don't know it all. Because every time I look up, it's like, oh my gosh, there's something else he does. So there's something with dancing.
Yes, I actually have been dancing since the age of 4. And I had four dance companies in Seattle. And then prior to that, I opened up a dance studio before I moved to Seattle. And then I had a dance studio in Seattle, but then we just it was getting too much because I had like 4 dance companies and a dance studio, and it was a lot going on. So I don't do things like small. Like I just like to go forth and do it.
Apparently.
But yeah, right. So yeah, I do a lot of dancing, and right now, currently, since moving to California, I work with the AIDS Project of Los Angeles. And so on my free time, there's a program that I'm a part of called Healthy Him. And so on my free time, I teach a class, a free community class every other week on Monday. So,
wow.
Yeah.
Okay, where does the Army fit in there?
The Army has been a huge reason and our foundation of who I am today. I used to be a really huge wild child and just kind of like, I was doing a lot of activism in New York prior to me joining the Army. And 9/11 happened, and I got really emotionally hit by it. And so I turned into, like, I was already an angry kid. So me having that happen and being it's so close to home when, you only see stuff like this, on TV, that's across seas or what have you. But never something that's so close to home and in such a city that is one of the, biggest cities in the United States. So you see gun violence and all those other things, but you don't expect like a terrorist type, situation to occur like that. So I was really angry and I didn't care who was in office at that time. I was ready to just kind of, fight.
Wow.
So I joined, and plus, another motivation for me to join, in addition to, my how I was feeling, was I just wanted to get out of New York for a little bit. And I felt like, I had no way to get out. Like I was just kind of going into this kind of abyss of being another New Yorker that never leaves, Prior to me joining the military, the only time that I had ever left New York was to go to Jersey, which is really the little New York.
Right there. Yeah, right.
Right. Right. And then even in the 6th grade, I went to Philadelphia for a field trip. So that was like the only times that I had really ventured outside of, the city, outside of New York State. And so that was another reason I just wanted to get out and just kind of grow and kind of discover who I would be outside of having this New York label. And so when I joined the Army, I learned a lot. I realized that the Army, as well as I'm sure other branches of the military, kind of sets you up for how to kind of understand a corporate life. And it definitely helped me with that. In addition to that, it made me a lot more confident. And it was funny because a lot of people didn't really realize, like, they looked at me like, oh, you do all this advocacy or activism or whatever, and you're joining the Army? What the hell's wrong with you? And so, they didn't really understand why I did that. And I didn't understand it at first. I was just kind of being led. So I just kind of went with the flow on it. But once I did, I obviously everybody has their issues, with their military experience. But for me personally, I grew, I think, the most, and I became the most confident after joining the military. I felt like I had a lot more life skills, a lot more experience, and I was able to kind of really invest myself into myself and really see my breaking points and know that, even at those breaking points that I can still keep going. And that was a huge revelation for me and why I stayed in for the amount of time that I did.
And how long did you stay in?
For about 6, 7 years, I think, yes. I'm going to say 6 or 7 years. Because I was originally supposed to get out on my 4th year, and I wasn't going to re-up, and then I got stop-lossed. That sucked. So, and it kind of solidified my decision to get out. I just didn't want to deploy or do anything else more, and I knew it was my time. Because, you've been in the military, so you understand, like, it's kind of difficult to really start a life or really have a life when you're in the military because nothing's ever stable. And you never can, say, oh, I'm going to, lay roots down here, and that's going to be it. Fortunately, I didn't really change a lot of PCS stations, I didn't PCS to a lot of different stations. So I stayed in Fort Lewis, and then, now it's Joint Base Lewis McChord, but I stayed there, from the time that I left AIT until the time that I ETS'd. So.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Right.
So what did you do while you were in?
So I was they deleted the MOS, but in the middle of my service, by the way, which I was a little ticked off about. So I dealt with basically I was communication security. I was a 25 Delta, so signal.
ComSec.
Yes,
ComSec.
Yes.
Yep, I remember when they got rid of it, and now it's like a additional duty or whatnot.
Yeah, now it's an additional skill identifier. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but at the time, my job kind of was hand in hand with a lot of military intelligence. So we worked with the MI a lot. At least my office did, and because I was in First Corps, so like it was just we were already at the top, so we had to like kind of govern all of the ComSec on Fort Lewis, and as well as the ComSec for overseas and I believe the West Coast, Pacific PACOM. So yeah.
Wow, that's
yeah.
Interesting. So how was your transition?
My transition was a little difficult. Transitioning out, like I knew what I wanted to do because I had already tried my best to kind of integrate my passions while I was still in the military. I had a dance company, a performing arts company that I had started in Tacoma. And because of deployments and because of, work-life balance or whatever, it was really hard. Even though we kind of were taking off, it was just really difficult. I had to make a decision and, to kind of, am I going to put all of my energies into this, or am I going to, focus on what, I've been, what I signed up for. And so I made the decision. I was like, well, hey, this is nice. And eventually, if, God's willing, I will be able to do this again. But I need to focus on what I signed up for, my original responsibilities. And so I kind of had to let that fade away a little bit. I tried to keep it alive as much as I could and have other people take over, but it wasn't the same. If people don't have the same vision that you do for, and is as passionate and knows what they're doing in terms of, what you want to do, it's kind of hard for them to take over what you start because it's not their baby. You know what I'm saying? So that was a difficult pill to swallow. But after I got out, and after 6 months of depression, realizing that I can't just get up and, go to formation and see, my battle buddies every day, I got to a point, because the first couple of months I was like, yes, I don't have to get up to formation.
Right.
I don't have to do this. And then I started realizing, I was like, well, what am I going to do? Well, maybe I'll go for a walk, What am I supposed to do? Like, I'm sitting on all this money that I saved up because I couldn't use it. I'm sitting, on all this, knowledge and things and potential, and I didn't know what to do at the time. And I'm just like, okay, I'll just chill. You know what I'm saying? But after a while, like, that's one of the reasons why I like to stay busy, is because I don't get me wrong. I think that everybody needs to have quiet time and have their moment, and have time to kind of reflect and be still. But there's only but so long that you need to be idle. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to be idle, and I like to be productive. And, I definitely feel like God gave me gifts, to utilize. So if I'm going to sit here and waste it, I'm not doing a service to him or to myself. You know what I'm saying? So I figured, I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll start the dance company again. So I looked at, this time I was like, no, I'm not just going to do, because I have the artistic side. I know how to choreograph. I know how to put on shows. I know, I still have connections, in terms of getting people, to fund it. I have all these different things, but I need to learn more about the business side. So I studied for a good solid year. I studied business law. I went to school for law. And I was like, I need to know the back end of everything, because otherwise I'm going to have to hire a business director. And the last time when I did my first dance company, or performing arts company, I had a business director who wasn't really strong in that field and didn't really know the ins and outs of what, like the difference between a 501c3 and, an S corporation and stuff like that. So and licensing and music licenses and all these different things. And so we got hit with a lot of fines because, and I didn't realize, and of course, half of us were military, so it was nothing, but it was at the same time, I'm out of the military, and it's why spend, money on unnecessary expenditures when I can be putting it towards, the goals of what we're doing. And so I studied and I studied and I studied, and I said, before I even come out here, I want to at least have a better foundation and a better idea of how I'm going to attack the situation. And so we went ahead and, I started studying. I started, looking at different people, and I started teaching at different studios and seeing what they did and how they operated and looking at different things. So I started teaching and building my name up, because I figured, they don't know me. I just got out of the military. I can't just say, oh, I have a dance company. Say like, come and join. If I don't have anything behind it, my resume is only going to take me but so far. And so, especially if you don't have a reputation in the area. So I started talking to the other directors, dance directors and artistic directors and studio owners, and asking them if they'd, be interested in me teaching. And so I got a bunch of different teaching gigs and started teaching at different places, and really trying to define of what I wanted in this company. Is it going to be just a regular dance company? Is it going to, am I just going to put on shows? Is it going to be something that is going to bridge both my passions in terms of advocacy and dance? And so I went through this whole journey of trying to just rediscover who I am and grow through the business and grow through the company. So I started it up again, and it was a lot easier to start up this time because I had more knowledge. But I think also growing, and learning, not knowing, that you have to be careful who you put around you. It was a huge eye-opener for me, because in the military, you have your battle buddies, and, you all getting shot at together. So at the end of the day, you're going to ride or die for them. You know what I'm saying? So I had this whole mentality, yeah, I'm going to go out there, I'm going to get a whole bunch of people that love to dance, and they're not going to screw me over. You know what I'm saying? And they did.
Not so, yeah.
Right.
So different on the outside.
Exactly. It's very different on the outside. And so, that was another growing experience. And, I ended up, stopping, that one and starting up another one later on. And it just transitioned into what I am today and who I am today in terms of all these growths. Because finally, by the time I got to Seattle, that's when I really really focused on making the best that I could in terms of a dance company. And it ended up turning into this huge foundation like that I did not expect. So we had different divisions. We had, and a lot of us was a lot of my college friends who were there. One of my battle buddies who was in the military with me, we got out together. And so he was just really a huge rock for keeping me grounded. And so I took everything that I had and learned and kind of reapplied to this new formation of what the dance company was going to be. And it turned into, it kind of gave me a name for, in Seattle for what I did, and I still am like kind of miss it a little bit. Because when I left, I handed over the right to a very amazing choreographer back in Seattle, and she ended up turning it around and changing it and doing different things to fit her vision, which is fine because it was no longer my baby. But I still kind of miss, a little bit of what we were doing there. But now, kind of going into this whole podcasting venture, and also, still teaching dance and also kind of rediscovering, different passions that I have that's kind of reigniting inside of me. I really am proud of where I'm at now. You know what I mean? Like I'm in a different space. And before, change was not, I'm a Capricorn. So Capricorns don't like change too quickly. Like I need you to give me one change at a time. Okay, I need a moment. I don't need you to be throwing all this at me all at once. And, especially in the past year, change has been happening a lot in terms of good change and growth and just transitions and things of that nature. And I at first, my initial reaction was like, nope, pause. We're not doing this. Okay, we need to talk, guys. We need to have a conversation. But I've gotten to a point where I've just kind of let things go and kind of rode the wave and just really entrusting my spirit a lot more and the decisions that I make and taking and it's okay to take time to make decisions. I think a lot of people feel pressure to make decisions and how they move forward. And I've really learned, to really be careful who's around me, who's in my inner circle, who is there to kind of, who I look at for advice and things of that nature. So the people who are in my life now, I'm very blessed to have such a strong support system in every aspect of my life, whether it be in the podcasting world, whether it be in, my personal life, whether it be in my work life, everything. So I am very happy with the growth that has happened and also with, the skills that I've acquired, from being in the military, because I do equate, that a lot to my service time and what I've learned during that time. And I think a lot of people forget, because they either had a bad experience in the military or they just didn't like didn't like it for whatever reason. We grow a lot in the military. We grow tremendously, and it's forced upon us. So it's not like you have a choice, and so a lot of those skills in terms of, me being aware and sometimes overly aware of my surroundings and overly aware of body language and tension and things of that has really at times saved my life. So I just really I'm very cognizant now of my feelings, emotions, and things that are around me a lot more. So, and I'm going on a tangent, and I apologize.
It's okay. It's okay. I'm learning more and more about you. I just hate that I only have 30 minutes with you. And you mentioned your work. We haven't even talked about your 9-to-5 job.
Yes. So I am currently a director of compliance and support. So we deal with a lot of just kind of making sure, and I can't really say my job out loud what it is. Right. But so I deal with a lot of just making sure that the T's are crossed and I's are dotted and making sure that things are functioning according to the policies and standards of the company.
Those who are listening, it sounds like Kwame is old. You're only what, 34? You just turned 34?
I'm 32. 32. I just turned 32.
I'm giving you a couple of years. Just turned 32 and he's talking like he's 52.
That's funny you said that. I was talking to a friend who I'm currently talking to right now. So we were talking and he said, you're very mature for your age. Like you even at 32, you have a really good head on your shoulders. And I was like, I have a lot of experience. And also I think it's because I've surrounded myself with more mature people. Not necessarily just in terms of age, but in terms of just mindset. And I've never been the type of person, you know, of course you have people like, you know, you have your friends, you know, that would just, you know, that's there to just entertain you. But then the people who I definitely like seek wisdom from and seek advice to and tell my secrets and all that stuff to, like, I get a lot of knowledge from them and I trust them because of the fact that they have their own experiences and they give me the space to make my own decision. And I think that that's where, you know, a lot of people forget in friendships. It is just like, oh, well, I'm your friend. You're supposed to listen to me. That's fine, boo. You're an advisor. Don't, you know what I'm saying? Like, don't forget. Okay? Because at the end of the day, that decision is still mine alone. You know what I mean? So I think
it definitely is.
And people who are, it's for the friends and people who I seek advice and wisdom and affirmations from, you know, they are very, very supportive and very, very willing to just tell it like it is. You know?
Yeah, and the people who you surround yourself with makes a huge difference in your life.
Yes.
Huge difference.
Yes.
On your outlook, on the decisions that you make, and just, you know, your freedom. It's so much. Relationships are so important. And speaking of relationships, so you are openly gay.
I am.
You've mentioned God. You've mentioned God. So can you tell us about that journey of coming out? I hope that's politically correct. Of coming out and your religion and your family and the military, all of that, and being a Black gay guy.
That's a very
Black gay
guy.
No,
it's Black gay guy. That Black gay guy. That guy. No, that's actually a very convoluted question, and I'm going to do my best to answer it as quickly and as effectively as possible. So my coming out story, and this is nothing against, and I always say this, you know, I'd rather not podcast like my other podcasts that I'm on because it's basically how we view the world from a gay man's perspective. And I always tell, you know, people that I don't envy, because I think that there's a huge issue and a huge generational gap between millennial gays and, millennial LGBTQ plus and older generations of LGBTQ plus, because we had and I'm kind of like right in the cusp. Like I understand millennial thought because I consider myself a millennial as well. However, I was raised old school and I also lived a lot of what older generations have went through. So I couldn't my coming out experience was horrific. Like it was bad. My coming out experience was really bad. I was in an all-Black community. I was the lightest person there. So I was already dealing with, you know, being light-skinned and, you know, trying to find my identity and, you know, being gay, you know what I'm saying? And still trying to come to terms with who I am and trying to figure it out, and also trying to find a sense of belonging. Because at the time, I wasn't hanging out. Like a lot of people were like, oh, you were in New York, so you were probably on Christmas Street all the time. No, boo. I went to school, I went back home, and I went to my extracurricular activities. That was it. My mom had my stuff on lock. Like, that's how it was. You get home, you do your homework, and you can play outside. We have a big yard. You stay in the gates. You know what I'm saying? That was it. So I didn't really have a lot, you know, other than the kids that, you know, that were in the neighborhood that came over to my house to play with us in the gate, not inside the house. My mom didn't play that. You ain't messing up her floors. You know what I'm saying? So you're going to go outside. We have a big yard. You go ahead and use that, you know. And a lot of the neighbors, the kids in the neighborhood, and then we ventured out to, like, just outside the gate, so, like, right in front of the house in the street. And that was okay. But that was when I got a little bit older. But still, with that being said, I didn't really I didn't have a lot of LGBTQ mentors until I got older. And so when I had, like, relationships and all these different things, or thinking I was, like, trying to, you know, be, you know, trying to have my own life and trying to have, you know, a love life or whatever that means at 14 or 15 years old, you know what I'm saying? I made a lot of different mistakes and ultimately could have put myself in serious danger, and or I wouldn't be here today. And I think that it's because of this little weird gut feeling that I always have when something is tremendously wrong. That's why I keep going back to my spirit. Like anytime that I feel like something's tremendously wrong, or when I just need to not go. Like there's been times that I have not turned down a street that I've always gone on without any issues, and because I just felt like I should go all the way around or make a complete detour, and it saved my life. So luckily, you know, luckily I listened to my spirit a lot, you know, even when I was younger being a dumbass, you know what I mean? I still listened to my spirit. And I think that's been kind of my flow growing up. And I think that, you know, trying to assess that and trying to connect with my family and trying to connect, you know, with my religion at the time. Because at the time I joined my brother's church because he was all into it. And I was this huge, mind you, by day I was Kwame. Good students, you know, didn't join any gangs, was always doing what he needed to do, came home, did his homework sometimes, you know what I'm saying? Like, played video games, cleaned up his room, did what he needed to do. But by night, I was gay activist Kwame. You know what I'm saying? Like, everybody in the streets knew me, especially when I got older, like, you know, in my older teens. I worked with a lot of different programs. And it's funny because my family didn't know any of this until I joined the Army. They didn't know any of this. They didn't know that I was, you know, a part of, you know, working towards legislation with a lot of different people within New York and the city council. They didn't know I was at a protest at the city council for LGBTQ student rights. They didn't know that I worked with, you know, a lot of different LGBTQ centers to help with the gay-straight alliances, things of that nature. They didn't know a lot. They didn't know I worked with GLAAD. You know, they didn't know any of this. So I was a completely different person at home. I was just really quiet. I laughed, joked around or whatever, was the good kid. And then, you know, I was activist Kwame, fighting the system, you know, for all these different things. And it was hard because I felt like I was two different people. And I didn't really have a way to kind of merge who I was, and I didn't have a way to safely do it at the time. So when a lot of kids come out, you know, especially now the kids that I mentor and people that I talk to, in terms of when they tell me their stories and they say, oh yeah, my mom, when I told her she, you know, we bought pizza and we went out, you know, everything was fine. I was like, you bought pizza? Okay. I had a chunk club thrown at me, okay? Like I was like I don't know that life. You know, but of course now my mother is completely different now. Like, and we talk, you know, differently about, you know, how we are with each other. We're like, I feel like I got my best friend back again. You know what I'm saying? Like, she is a completely different person than she was when I first came out. And it was weird because that was the person who I thought was going to be like, everything's okay, we're going to hide this from Dad. You know what I'm saying? It's so ready. But it turned around. My dad was like, okay, how do you know you're gay? You know, and he asked me more calming questions and things like that. My mom was like, I'm never going to have grandkids. Oh, my God. Like, what? Like, this is not about you. Like, first of all, this is not about you. Second of all, my oldest brother has enough grandkids for you for a lifetime. So I don't understand why you coming at me. I don't understand. Like, what is this? This is very confusing. But it was crazy. But anyway, but yeah, going into the military, that's when, you know, and if you remember, I mentioned earlier, a lot of my friends were really confused by it, especially my activist friends. They almost turned their back on me a little bit because I had to hide who I was. At the time when I joined, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was in full force. And it was like in full force. I had to, and thank goodness there was no social media at the time. Like, MySpace didn't come out until I got into AIT. So there was no social media. I think there was like Zynga, but no, it wasn't like a big thing. It was like those like blog things that the teens would share with each other, and parents didn't really give a shit, you know, about what it was. And nobody really knew who it was. And you couldn't really tell who it was unless you told them, this is my Zynga page. And so everything was like super secret. I had to deny all my friends. I changed my number. Like, it was crazy. You know, people were coming over to my house asking me, like, hey, is Kwame okay? Oh, yeah, he's in the Army. What? What do you mean? What do you mean he's in the Army? Is he okay? Did they kidnap him? It's like, are you sure? Are we talking about the same Kwame? And I was like, yeah, he joined a couple of days ago. Okay. Like, it was really weird for them. And then, you know, when you're in basic, you can't really call anybody. And the couple of times that I was able to call people, I obviously called my family, my parents. And so I didn't have time to sit there and call everybody and their mama and say, hey, I'm okay. So it was a huge transition for me to just kind of, like, I almost felt like I went back in the closet. You know, and at the time I was in this realm where my parents were like super proud of me, and you know, I was like, yes, you know, they have another soldier in the family, and this one is actually staying in and not, you know, causing havoc. You know what I'm saying? So, like, you know, so in addition to that, me having all that pressure, wanting to do better, and wanting to make my parents proud, like, I just said, okay, well, I guess I'm not gay. You know what I'm saying? And I started dating, and one of my high school best friends, and it turned out to be an ugly situation because I had resentment in myself towards myself, and it ended up being resentment towards her as well. And on top of that, she had this expectation of like, well, you're marrying me or you're wanting to get with me, so obviously that you're not gay anymore. You know what I'm saying? And that was not the case. It was like so far from it. Yeah, it was a really sad situation. And so when I got out the Army, and you know, I started to come back to terms. You know, right before I got out the Army, I started to say, you know what, I really am gay. Like, this is not working. You know, like, this is, and it's okay. And so I started seeking, you know, counseling and stuff like that. And I think that a lot of people really don't, especially in the Black community, they don't focus on self-help and growth and things of that nature, especially when it comes to counseling and therapy and all that. And I think that there is a huge stigma with mental health in the Black community. But that's another topic.
Yeah, I'm looking at the time, and like I said, I don't want Marisol, like, cussing me out, like, really. Yes. I think we're gonna have to do like part 2 and part 3 of this.
Yeah, for sure.
Because this is definitely, oh my goodness, some good information, because this is one of the reasons for the podcast, like how you talked about your experience of coming out and then going into the military and, you know, pretty much pretending like you weren't gay for 6 or 7 years. I mean, that's huge. And just looking at how things have changed lately in the military and in society when it comes to the LGBTQ IA plus community. We definitely want to talk more about that and
for
how
sure.
It is when it comes to religion and being an African American male with it as well.
Awesome.
So I hate to rush you off. Rush you off. Listeners, just, you know, stay tuned. We will do another part 2 of the interview, or I'll try to get Kwame on a live or something else, y'all. I promise. What words of wisdom would you like to leave with the listeners?
I think, and I know that this is probably a cliche thing to say, but for those who are, you know, trying to figure out life and whether it be sexuality, whether it be religion, whether it be, you know, work life, relationships, whatever, the best thing that I've learned from myself and others that I've noticed is to live your truth, whatever that may be. You know, if your truth is that, you know, you no longer want to work in this medical field and you want to be, you know, a hairstylist, go do that. You know what I'm saying? If your truth is that you have been in this really unhappy relationship for however many years or whatever, and you know that you will be better off without this person, you need to probably do that. You know what I'm saying? If you are pretending to be straight and you're not, you know, live your truth, whatever that may be, and vice versa. You know what I'm saying? I've seen it all. Like, I've seen it all. So I definitely wish people the best in terms of, like, figuring out what that truth is and doing that and being and living that to the best of their ability and doing it fearlessly. And I think that once they do that life will be a lot easier, because it does get better.
You've been listening to the Veteran Woman Podcast. If you want to connect with Airial and let her know what you thought of today's show, be sure to head over to www.theveteranwoman.com and follow her on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter @The Veteran Woman.